Good day, sir. Today we're going to discuss our graphic organizer about the Human Act. I am Dueñas.
I am Riza Heredero.
I am Rasonabe.
I am Cristina Sanchez.
I am Ytac.
So first, I will discuss the definition of human act. Human act are actions done intentionally, free, and deliberate of a person. So there are three essential elements of human act. First is knowledge. Knowledge, it's about the awareness of the doer that he or she doing. An action must be done by a conscious person who knows what he is doing and the consequences of his action. Second is freedom. An action must be done by a conscious person who is actively free using his abilities, capabilities, volition, and powers. And lastly, voluntariness. An act must be done by a conscious person who willfully makes the decision to do the act without coercion coming from any person or circumstances.
And now let's talk about the circumstances of human act, which is what is circumstances? Circumstances is something that while existing outside substance of an act touches on the act in some way. So circumstances it has seven human act circumstances which is who it refers to an act performed with the involvement of the other people. This just like in the circumstances of who must be evaluated based on the factors such as age. And what is refers to the act itself, an act naturally good or evil based on our ability to determine its nature regardless of other circumstances. And when it refers to the time when act is performed, for example, killing is evil itself, but such act is grave if performed when the victim is unconscious or sleeping. And is with whom, it refers to an act performed with the involvement of other people. These people, just like on circumstances of who, must be evaluated based on the factors such as age. For example, drinking involving minors is wrong, but it becomes grievously evil when adults join and tolerated them of doing the act. And, and next is why. It refers to the ends of the doer as discussed above. And the second to the last is how. It refers to the manner of how an act is performed. In the case of self-defense, we can only consider this act as morally acceptable if the act is supported with reason. And last is where. It refers to the place where the act is performed. There are neutral action, neither good nor bad, that become good or evil because of these circumstances.
The elements for making moral decision. The 7 steps of moral reasoning model, a model for making moral decision, Ray 1996 suggests the following procedure for making moral decisions. Within this work is not to get you to the right answer, but to help you ask the right question in your ethical deliberation. Ray says his model is free from cultural, ethnic, and religious background biases, though it is consistent with the Bible and uses biblical principle. It is not a distinctively Christian model. A model for making moral decisions, it is oriented towards virtues and principles with consideration of consequences as a supporting role. Many moral dilemmas or issues are not addressed clearly, if it at all, in the Bible, so we apply principles and virtues to each. The problem then becomes which to apply and how. Often weight needs to be given to elements within a problem. There is a danger of trying to oversimplify things by claiming to the biblical. This is the elements for making the moral decision. First is the gather the facts. Go back over the information given and write down all the facts. The simplest way of clarifying on ethical dilemma it is to make sure facts are clear. The next is determine ethical issues. Ethical interests are stated in terms of legitimate competing interests or goods. The competing interests are what creates the dilemma. The next is determine what virtues. In an ethical dilemma, certain values and principles are central to the competing position. The right of the patient to give informed consent. Chemotherapy is a very invasive treatment. This is recognized by the law. The person has a right to control what happened to his body. And the next is list the alternatives. Some will almost immediately be discarded, but generally, the more you list, the greater potential for coming up with a really good one. And the next one is compare the alternatives with the virtues. This step eliminates alternatives as they are weighed by the moral principles, which have a bearing on the case. Potentially, the issue will be resolved here as all alternatives except one are eliminated. The next is consider the consequences. If the principles have not yielded a clear decision, consider the consequences of your alternatives. Take the alternatives and work out the positive and negative consequences of each. Next is make a decision. Ethical decisions rarely have pain-free solution. It might be you have to choose the solution with the least number of problems or painful consequences.
Moral courage, the difference between reason and will. Moral courage is described as the willingness to act for moral reason even at risk and as adverse consequence. May take the form of inconvenience, being unpopular, punishment, loss of friends, and poverty among the others. In many situations, we know the right thing to do, but oftentimes fail to do it. As we look in the discipline of human activity, we can see two great dynamos, the intellect and the will of man. The next and general principle. General principle of law are legal norms existing among the majority of nations. Typical follow in the most jurisdictions are the of good of the doctrines of good faith, example of equity. Research in general often requires taking a deeper look into the domestic law of the nation or region you are interested. The next and feelings. Feeling is different from emotion. Feelings can help to identify underlying emotion that are rising up inside you and manifesting as action and behaviors. Without awareness of this concept, we can feel like we're being pushed around by invisible force or that we have to no control over ourselves with every major life decision. There are consistent set of feelings for me. And the next is subjective. Subjective most commonly means based on the personal perspective or reference of a person. The subject who observes something and construct most commonly means not influenced by or based on personal viewpoint. And the next is subjectivism. In is the doctrine that our own mental activity is the only unquestionable fact or our experience instead of share or commonwealth and that there is no external objective truth. Simple subjectivism interpret moral judgment as a statement that can be true or false, so a sincere speaker is always right when it comes to moral judgment. On the other hand, interpret moral judgment in either command or attitude as such they can be neither true or false. Next is express one attitude have been atomically selected and many contain sensitive content that doesn't not reflect the opinions or policies of Collins or its parent company Harpole Collins. And the last is emotivism. Emotivism is a meta-ethical view that claims that ethical sentences do not experience proposition but emotional attitudes. Hence is colonial known as the Hurabu theory experienced by the growth of the analytic philosophy and logical.
Next is rational thinking. Rational thinking is a process that refers to the ability to think with reason. Under of rational thinking, it's right moral decisions. Right moral decisions are not right versus wrong, but right versus right dilemmas. So next, rational thinking. Rational thinking is a process that refers to the ability to think with reason. And under the rational thinking, it's right and moral decisions. Moral decision is a choice made based on a person's ethics, manners, character, and what they believe is proper behavior.
Another factor under human acts is the human activity, which is a controlled action, and under that would be power and intelligence. The last factor under human acts is the practical views. Under the practical views is birth and growth to maturity of human self. With a better perspective, we can see the ingenuous strike us at once that the origins of burden control can be accurately described in the homely terms of the human activity, origins of every individual. Next would be the decision of execution and in everyday life. The beginnings of that growth will, of course, be under the protecting wing of home life. The period included by council, consent, judgment, and election. Lastly would be the government of the kingdom of men. The whole process is indeed nothing more or less than the process of the government of the kingdom of man and his empire of the universe. It is the question of the intelligent control and directions of his life, his actions, his contacts with the universe to the one end of attaining happiness.
That's all. Thank you.